Hi guys, it's Janelle Stali. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to review the new Elvis movie that just came out maybe June 24th. I actually went to see it last weekend and I did make a post about it on my community page. Just a very short review and kind of like a summary of what I think of the movie, very generally speaking. And I actually still abide to that. I still believe what I wrote. I've seen it only once. I'm planning to see it more than once, actually. I would like to see it one more time, but definitely I haven't changed any opinion of it. I would say that there have been so many Elvis movies in the past, maybe 3 or 4, I would say. Mostly were concentrated and focused on the relationship with Priscilla, so his marriage life and all that. And I have to say, even though some of the actors were actually pretty famous actors and were actually very good, I would say Austin Butler from this movie is the one that most resembles him. Many people have saw he doesn't resemble him at all. I would say when I speak about resemblance, I'm referring to the whole package. I'm not talking about just physically. I'm talking about the voice, the attitude, the demeanor, all that. It kind of everything, the voice and the costumes, the way he moves, everything. Even what he says reminds me of Elvis. However, his appearance when he was a little bit younger, I would say he reminded me of him less and physically. If I have to objectively look at him, Austin Butler is a very skinny guy, and he's very skinny also in his feature. He has very refined feminine features, while Elvis didn't really have those. He had big lips, he had a very pronounced nose, had a very rounded face. So it was not exactly, it was very mainly. Instead, Austin Butler has a very small nose, it's very refined. So of course there's very much defined physical differences, but as he grew older in the movie, he resembled them even more. It's crazy. Even when he was tan, there were some performances in which he looked very tan, or he looked even older, a little bit overweight, like swollen, right? I guess at that stage in time in the movie, he really resembled them. So overall, the acting was amazing, and I have no complaints of Austin Butler and his performance. I think he was the star of the movie. He attracted all the attention, and I'm quite pleased with whatever they did with him. Everything that he has done, from the musical performances to the acting to the voice to the physical appearance, I have no complaints about him. He really did the best that he could with whatever he had. There's no way to be an imitation or a complete replica of Elvis. Elvis was one of a kind, so physically, musically, and all that. So, but I have to say, voice-wise, oh my gosh, sometimes I close my eyes and just to see what I felt, and honestly I thought I was hearing Elvis. It was so, the resemblance was striking, and for that only I have to give this movie a great review, just because Elvis, it's about Elvis. Any biographical movie revolves about the person that they're featuring or they're talking about, and when that individual is a good match with the actor or is interpreted beautifully, usually that saves the movie as a whole, just because that's the focus. When I talk about the other characters, if some other characters were on the weaker side, they're side actors, so they're not the most important actors, so overall they wouldn't hurt the movie that much. For example, I will say that I disliked Tom Hanks. I disliked his character, but I believe because the Connor was the antagonist and he was also the storyteller, he was the voiceover of this movie, and I find that quite interesting. And I like this about this movie because he wanted to make this movie about himself, almost like the Con is telling his story. It's about him. It's about how he basically raised Elvis to being a poor guy, musician, to a star, a real showman, and it was all thanks to him. So I basically told the story from his perspective, but also thinking that he was the protagonist. And it's so interesting how, as the movie goes on, it kind of he loses his voice. So weird, but he keeps telling the story. We hear his voice, we see his point of view, but it's like Elvis such a bigger event. It's a bigger being. I don't know how to explain it, but he's like a phenomenon that took over his story, and almost we started seeing Elvis and his point of view, his perspective, which is impossible. When someone else is telling the story, that person will never know what the other person is feeling. They can only say what they see. There is like an appearance, what's happening on the surface, the events, but they will never feel the way the characters feel or whatever they're talking about, because they're supposed to be the objective party, right, from the outside to the inside. Elvis was the protagonist, but it almost like it was not meant to be the protagonist based on storytelling, and he became the protagonist because he took over the story. It's like his persona took over storytelling. Even the way the colonel died, metaphorically, when you see all these stars, like you were seeing all these stars kind of like shining, like almost on the verge of dying, and you see the last star shining through. That's Elvis. Like there's only one Elvis, and really his one person, that's one person that kind of dominated the stage and also his life and his story. They took over. So Cornell basically lost his protagonism. He lost his voice because it was not as important as Elvis. It's almost like, yes, it was just really interesting how it was done. And I thought it was brilliant. But again, if I have to mention a con in this movie, is really the colonel, just because I disliked him very much. And also his presence was bothersome. But of course, this movie was about the relationship, the turmoil between Elvis and this manager of his that really did help in a sense to become a star and become bigger than what he wanted to be. And that was the problem. Elvis never wanted to be this rich. He never wanted to have all this fame. All he wanted was to really help his family, bring them out of poverty. And then it became more about eternity, more about being remembered. There is one phrase in the movie where Elvis says, "I'm going to be 40 and no one is going to remember me. I haven't done a major classic movie, a major classic song. Like I've done songs here and there influenced by other parties, but he felt he didn't bring anything to the table, but he's always influenced by other parties," which in part is true, but keep that in mind. Each artist, every artist that ever lived on earth is always influenced by someone else. Always. There's no such a thing as creation. That's why I always have a distinction between being a creator and being a generator. And it sounds weird, but the generating something always entails that it's generating from something else as a continuation. It's the creation is like all of a sudden out of nowhere, which doesn't exist in reality. Sincerely, like I'm speaking honestly, we're always influenced by some other person, always someone that preceded us, or even simultaneously that you watch and see. There's not necessarily an imitation, but an inspiration. There's nothing wrong with that. And Elvis, on turn, has influenced many artists that happened after him, that came after him, like Freddie Mercury is starting from that, from other the Beatles. I mean, he was influenced. He was an influence to so many other artists, and he is indeed considered the most popular, famous artist of all time, because he has started some type of movement that in reality it was happening underground. It's not that it was not existing, but it never came to the surface like that. He brought it to the surface. He gave it a character. He gave it a certain power, right? He was a true showman, a beautiful voice, of course, but he was a showman. And that's why they always mention they mentioned the creation of the greatest show on earth. That was their goal. Right? It was not about the greatest singer on earth. They were focused on entertainment on the show. And like I said, as Elvis' goal was to create the best show on earth, even though it was not initially like that. He just wanted to really like having their needs met. He kind of his goal changed with the influence of the colonel and the audience, of course. I wanted to be remembered like everyone else that wants to be remembered. I would say the movie kind of reflects that. The movie, the way it's presented, the editing, it's always so uh, illuminating. It's interesting. It's experimental. I love these experimental movies that basically affects also the editing, the way it's edited, with the way it's cut. You never really hear one song fully. Never. I guess they do it because they want to squeeze as much in, but you never really hear the full song. You sometimes hear a portion of the song and it's edited in a way that's almost like a whisper. Like, it's so interesting the way they edited this movie. Then they made it so entertaining. It's a very long movie, which I don't find it very nice that it's a very long movie, okay? Because many people don't have time to watch these long movies. Only way to make it entertaining, I think, it's an editing like this. I think it's a good technique to make it more interesting, very colorful, uh, very eccentric, because that's how he was. He was a very eccentric figure. So the movie represents that beautifully. It really captured the essence of Elvis Presley. And also, I'm so happy that after this movie was shown, everyone started remembering his music. It was the biggest thing then. And honestly, I was never really a fan. I never experienced it. I was not even born during that time. So, of course, I can never understand what he meant to so many people. And also, I would say that this movie is exposing him to the younger generation, my generation, that never really experienced him face to face. And everywhere I go, I hear his music in the radio. I hear his music like, I went to the beach, as you can tell, I'm kind of reddish. I got tan. But anyway, I went to the beach and they were playing his music. It's just beautiful that people started to listen to his music again, and thinking of what he said about himself, that he felt old and he felt that he was not leaving an impact to the world, and that was sad because he truly thought of that. It seems like, based on interviews and documentaries, he was obsessed about leaving some type of mark, and he felt it was just an imitation of many styles, and he was not able to really bring anything new, but in reality it was a novelty. And of course, so at that age, you put that pressure on yourself, and you don't realize how much you're changing people's lives, and you're making people happy to watch you. So anyway, so that was kind of interesting. He speaks a lot about celebrity, what it means to be a celebrity, a true influencer, that someone that affects people's lives. It makes them better, makes them feel better. It gets them out of the mess of reality, and they embark on this world, and they feel this joy and this, I don't know, entertainment, true bliss, in a way, a moment of escapism, like a way to escape reality. That was his way. Was that type of performances? It was a way to escape reality for the audience as well. So he was a good entertainer through and through. Like, there's no one like him, really. I would say that it was almost a perfect movie because forget the 3 hours. I'm still trying to get over that. And it was beautifully done, cinematically speaking. The acting was great. Like I said, the only criticism is really the time of the movie, like, of course, the length, and then the Connell, because I thought it was too present, but unfortunately it was part of the story and he was the storyteller. But that changed towards middle movie. It's like as Elvis understood how he was being manipulated, the storyteller almost lost his voice. So I found that very interesting. Um, as he had more control in the beginning, that's where the storytelling part was more prominent. But as he lost the power, he lost his voice, especially when Priscilla came to be. And he even said that when he found love, I didn't expect that I should have taken that into consideration, because he knew that he would have lost some type of control over him. And he kind of did. He really did a lot of things that were against the con and what he wanted for him, but then he kind of got stuck on because of the financial things that were going on between them. But anyway, the financial demands, but he did deviate from a lot of decisions the Connor made for him. And I have to say, Priscilla was a beautiful contribution to this movie. Of course, it was part of his reality, and also his mother was a part of his reality, and I think they made a huge impact on his life. I will say that meeting Priscilla, the divorce, and also his mother's death were absolutely the climax. They represent really the climax in his life, and kind of like it went like this. So basically, you have his life when his mother was alive. You go climb, climb, climb. Then his mother died. You really go down the hill, and then he meets Priscilla and kind of goes a little bit up again, and then they divorce, and he goes down like this. So these two events, like divorce from Priscilla and so his mother's death, these two events kind of like imperative into his fall. Really, this movie shows the rise and fall of a star, of a man that was beyond being a man, like he was viewed as a god. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. And that just shows you a really life events can really destroy anybody. No one is above that. Really, it's really how you handle things, and sometimes some people really don't have the power to do that. The fact is, when you don't have a support system, it's very hard to get away from these things, or from letting these things get to you and destroy you. And he really lost the support system, starting from his mother. His father was no help, of course, abused him the same way as Colin did. And then I would say Priscilla, when he lost that support, it really it went bad. It was downhill from there, and it's just sad. It's very sad. I even wrote in my comment, like, your glory goes hand in hand with your doom. That's a quote that I took from other movies. It's very much repeated, and I hear it, and it sounds so right and so true. It seems like all these big stars, right, like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, like these big stars, they kind of like go on a path of self-destruction when they lack some type of support system, or they reject the support system. Because Elvis Presley had a support system, such as his wife, but because of his self-destructive behavior, he kind of lost it. And that's sad, because of course she was the only one who stood up to him, saying, like, I'm not dealing with this shit anymore. So she walked away. She wouldn't give him what he wanted. Instead, everyone was just giving what he wanted. I'll try a way to keep going, make sure he kept singing. I actually was crying by the end. It was very emotional, especially hearing some of the songs, especially the last song. I'm not going to spoil too much, but yes, the last song really broke me. And also hearing Elvis singing himself, the way they kind of did the juxtaposition and the cuts between the actor singing and Elvis singing, in the same scene, it was very touching. And I could what I was thinking was myself, oh my God, can I imagine his daughter, his ex-wife, watching this, and I feel for them. It breaks my heart, That's the first people I was thinking about, was his family. And it's just sad. Honestly, I don't think Elvis would have survived at all. Even if they survived then, I don't think he would have survived seniority, in the sense that the way he was speaking, he was really upset about growing older and older and not being able to perform, being sick, because technically he was not healthy enough to perform at that rate, and we got that from the movie. And even though they were pushing him to do so, but he really needed to take care of himself. It was very weak and unhealthy, and he needed to take care of that first. And he was not going to do that because he was pressured to keep performing, and he didn't want to accept it. And I feel like if he even went on for a couple more years, he would have felt miserable, not feeling healthy anymore. So in a sense, I'm glad that he didn't feel the pain anymore. They stopped feeling that pain and that unhealthy lifestyle. Like they just stopped. That he didn't have to suffer anymore. So I'm glad that in a way it was taken, and at the beginning of that path. But anyway, I would say that his relationship with Priscilla is the one that really drew me in on that emotional path, because I think Priscilla really brought out the most human part of him, and less the god part and of the superstar. She was just a wife, really, just a wife. She was not something like a star herself, really. That was the most important part of his life, knowing her and having a daughter, and building a family. And I think it gave him a lot of humanity. And there was a man behind all of this. There was nothing, there was no God. It was a human being. And like I said, every it's just so sad that towards the end he really felt so lonely. I felt the loneliness, these feelings of loneliness and self-destructions were all there, and it's just so sad. So sad. I think the part that broke me the most was when he actually fell onto the floor, and they were trying to revive him before going on stage, and they were kind of battling, okay, should he be rehabilitated, should go to a hospital, or should we give him something to wake him up? And they looked at his father, and the father said, doctor, do something so that he can go on stage. And that was heartbreaking to see that the medication, to inject him with that medication. Oh my god, that was medication, whatever it was, to revive him and make him alert again, because he was kind of like, I don't know exactly if it was on medication or it was like dizziness, but definitely something happened that kind of caused him to collapse. It was having some type of breakdown. How like his body was breaking. Really, it was not taking it anymore. Too many performances. He was tired. It was just exhausted. He was dying of exhaustion. Really, it's just so sad. It's like a talent like that, how much can you squeeze out? It's just terrible. How can you abuse someone like that? Someone who is so amazing and talented, that he was really, I felt that they were squeezing him, like, to get everything, every bits of him, just because every bit of him brought a lot of money, and it's horrible. Horrible. I wish there was the more protection towards him. I wish even from his own managers. Nowadays the laws are very strict, and when it comes to there's more protection towards celebrity, and I wish there was more protection towards him. He was the biggest celebrity then, and it's just so sad that unfortunately he was born at the wrong time, because unfortunately the law was not on his side then, and it's just sad. He didn't have the resource to prepare himself, protect himself. It really was naive. It was just 18 years old when he started out. He was such a young guy. He had a dream. He just did not want to live in poverty anymore, and it just took advantage of an opportunity, and honestly anyone would have done the same. So anyway, so that's my review of the movie. I totally recommend it. I think it was beautiful. It's worthy of Oscars, from a cinematic standpoint, also from the portrayal standpoint, for the performance of Austin Butler. I think he was superb, amazing. He really brought Elvis back to life, and I think it's the best portrayal of Elvis of all the other movies that have preceded this movie. So I cannot say anything bad about this movie except the length, but I do understand why it was very long, and also the Colonel specifically, I had very much a dislike towards him, and Tom Hanks specifically, I'm not a fan of the actor as a whole, but I did appreciate their relationship. All the relationships in this movie were portrayed very well. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think of the movie, if you've watched it, if you haven't, if you're intending on watching it, and just share it in the comments. I would love to see to read your opinions on it, because it's a very beautiful movie, but it was also kind of controversial in a sense that some people didn't like the editing of the movie, the length of the movie, so there was some type of criticism towards the movie, and some people have said that he doesn't really resemble Elvis, which I totally disagree. I think he does resemble him, and he does sound like him, which is the most important thing, by the way. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.